when we are vulnerable enough to envision our watery bodies standing with John on the island while he receives this portion of the revelation. Something new happens and something old passes away. The nemesis has a new name. The adversary has a new name, and it is the sea. And in a change from the old, the sea, once thought to be eternal, is no longer seen as so, because the one who is the beginning and is the end has revealed that the sea will be no more. While our human perspective suggests that the sea goes on and on forever, the loud voice declares that the sea is finite, temporary, and that it will be no more. It will be no more. It will, but what about now, I ask? Well, the scripture suggests to name it. Like John identifies the sea, we too can name our situation. Our island may not be Patmos, and so our seas may look a little different. But can you name your sea? Or would you like some help to do so? See, our bodies, they help us to name our sea. Yes, those watery bodies of ours help us to see, but not just with our eyes, also with our hearts. Our bodies, they help us to speak. Not just with our mouths, but with our tears. And our bodies proclaim that this is the end of the sea, that the sea is defeated when we write them with words as well as we take our actions and make our choices. But in a much deeper way, our bodies reveal to us the seas that are in our lives. Our water-dependent selves illuminate the dark seas of our community and society. Most of us have been ridiculed or alienated or chastised because of our physical body, whether it wasn't the norm or wasn't the expectation. Maybe it was because of how old we look, the color of our skin, our weight, our height, our limited mobility, the rightness of our body parts, the way our brain works, or the texture of our hair. Yes, I'll admit, the last one's a bit autobiographical. Yes, it was the texture of my hair that is at least a part of the gulf in my sea. And I remember that it started pretty young. I was about 3 and a half. I was in preschool, and I had no understanding of race relations. All I knew on this particular day was that my friends were now saying that I was different. They declared that I was black and they were white. And I remember putting my arm up next to one of them, and she admitted there wasn't much difference. But then with words that sounded like, no, felt like daggers to my preschool heart, she said, "It's your hair. You've got black people's hair. It's rough, well, mine is smooth." She was right. And I wailed. Kinky, nappy, ugly, rough, unmanageable. Those were the words that I heard growing up regarding natural black hair, my kind of hair. And even though it grew, it wasn't of value. No bounce or ringlets. It wasn't perfectly pressed out like Rudy Huxtable. No, not at all. And it was no wonder that my mom began to put relaxers in my hair when I was about 5. And I continued to have relaxers in my hair, despite the monthly chemical burns, until something new happened. I had a beautiful baby girl. And I wanted so much for Soraya to know that she was enough the way God made her. But I knew I had to first trust that truth. So last year after Greek school, I chopped off all my relaxed hair. But it wasn't until I was meditating on this scripture for a while in front of the mirror that something clicked. As much as I had cried over my hair over the years, I was tempted to think that my hair was my seed, that my hair was the point of my great grief. But God revealed a new thing. If anything, my hair was like the fresh water in the sea. The real source of the grief were the parching salts that had dissolved into the water. And some of those salts, well, they imprisoned me, putting me on a spiritual lockdown that kept me from believing that God made all hair, my hair, good. And some of the salts were oppressive, yielding lower self-esteem regarding my appearance and where I stood in the world. And some of them acted to separate, perpetuating this alienation that values one person over another. They functioned to isolate others, placing me alone in front of the pressure to be something other than who God created me to be. But what I deemed to be the most deadly of all these salts were the ones that tempted me to put the same pressure on other people. Yes, I can now see the sea. It is a blessing to let this text name my sea, or more honestly, a gulf within my larger sea. And I implore you to name your sea. Yes, use your watery bodies and name the adversary that attempts to threaten your living, that which imprisons, oppresses, separates, isolates, and tempts you. Yes, use your watery bodies, no matter how old that body may look, no matter the complexion of the skin that covers it, no matter its height or its weight or its mobility or its body parts or the way the brain works within it or even the texture of the hair upon it. Use your whole self. Even now, use your ears to hear these refreshing words as they come from the throne, saying, "See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people. And he himself will be with them, and he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Yes, every salty tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away." The voice of God is yet again bringing good news to the poor and release to the captive. In the middle of the sea, dare I say, in the middle of what looks like sheer death, John receives a revelation. A revelation that spoke to his situation, a revelation that declared that his imminent foe would be no more. Along with the sea, death will be no more, crying will be no more, mourning will be no more, and yes, pain will be no more. Likewise, class, know that God, the God of compassion, wipes away every one of your tears, cares about your situation. The Alpha and the Omega cares about your heartache. Our lives matter, our concerns matter, our brokenness matter, our deepest grief matters, yes, our tears matter. Too often we want to set aside our pain, we want to set aside our agony, those things that truly break our hearts. My prayer is that you will know that your seas are a vital part of your revelation. In a world where pain and grief still seem so unacceptable, especially in church, I plead for you not to be one of those pastors making dusty, dry jokes about being frozen and half dead while people spiritually shrivel because they have no place to carry their tears and their mourning. Because I sense that in this passage, tears are pivotal. In the new Earth's new water cycle, they act as a stage of filtration. Far less salty than the sea, still not nearly as pristine as the water of life. a second and look back at your story. I have heard you say that God has brought you all through something. When the waves of death could have taken you out, when the tsunami could have washed you away, you were brought out. And no matter how waterlogged you may feel, you are here. Despite being imprisoned, despite being oppressed, despite being isolated, despite being separated, and despite being tempted, you are here. God has revealed something special to you in the face of the sea as pastors, as preachers, as friends. Write this. Write this, for these words are trustworthy and true. As John wrote, and we can be transformed by his seas, our seas will do the same for others. And if you get weary and parched, remember there is a voice from the throne saying, to the thirsty, I will give water as a gift from the spring of the water of